Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another Tkinter Treeview deep dive?
Absolutely.
Last time we got things set up, learned to display some data and even capture user inputs.
Right. Got the basics down.
This time, though, we're kicking it up a notch. We're going to wire it all up to a MySQL database.
Yeah, we're moving beyond just displaying static data.
Exactly.
Now we're talking pulling information directly from a database, pushing updates back in.
A whole new level.
Real-world applications here.
Think about it. Imagine you're building like a student database app.
Okay.
Teachers could manage grades, attendance, all right, from that Tkinter interface.
Powerful stuff.
And to guide us on this adventure, we've got a fantastic article from Plus2Net.
Always appreciate a good resource.
It's called Adding Rows to MySQL Table and Using Insert in Tkinter Treeview.
Perfect for what we're doing.
Right. It's like they knew what we were up to.
It walks through a very common task, collecting data and storing it securely in a database.
Exactly. So let's jump right in.
Let's do.
The article kicks off with this Tkinter app. It takes some basic student info, name, class, mark, and gender. But the real magic here is how it sends that data to both the Treeview and a MySQL database at the same time.
Yeah, that simultaneous update is key.
What's the secret sauce?
Well, the core of it is creating a strong, secure connection between Tkinter and that MySQL database.
Okay.
They use SQLalchemy.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Really powerful tool for these database interactions, streamlines the whole process, make sure we're interacting with the database safely and efficiently.
So it's like a translator who speaks both Tkinter and MySQL fluently.
Perfect analogy.
I see in the code, it's using SQLalchemy to set up that connection, providing the database credentials.
Right, you need that handshake.
But this is where my security spidey senses start tingling.
Uh-oh, what's up?
Hard-coding sensitive information like passwords directly into the code.
Yeah, big no-no.
That can't be good practice, right?
You're absolutely right. And the article actually points that out, emphasizes that those placeholder credentials need to be replaced with actual values stored securely.
Makes sense.
This is where you'd bring in things like environment variables or dedicated configuration files.
Right, keep that sensitive information out of the code itself.
Exactly. Much safer that way.
That's a relief.
Security is paramount. Always.
All right, so we've got our secure connection. Now, how does the data actually move from those Tkinter input fields to the database?
The add data function is the star of the show here.
Okay.
Think of it as the conductor orchestrating that whole data insertion process.
I like that.
So it first grabs the data entered by the user.
Okay.
Then it puts it through a series of validation checks.
So it's not just blindly dumping whatever's there into the database.
Yeah, no. We've got to make sure it's good data.
Smart.
It's checking if the name and class fields are empty, making sure the gender is selected, and that the mark is actually in a number.
So it's like bouncer at the database door.
Exactly.
Only letting in the data that meets the criteria.
Keeps everything running smoothly.
This is such a good reminder that seemingly small steps, like input validation,
huge impact.
They can have a huge impact on an application's reliability.
Absolutely.
So once the data gets past those checks, what happens next?
The add data function gets to work building that SQL query to insert the data.
Okay, so it's speaking SQL now, but there's this whole section on parameterized queries.
Right, that's a critical part.
What's the big deal with that?
Parameterized queries are a major security measure.
Okay.
Instead of directly embedding user input into the query, which is a recipe for SQL injection attacks.
Right, that sounds bad.
Very bad.
So it's basically sanitizing the input before it even gets close to the database.
Exactly. Think of it like putting on a hazmat suit before handling something potentially dangerous.
I like that visual.
Keeps everything safe and sound.
I'm starting to see how these little details can have a huge impact on an app's security.
Absolutely. It's all about building secure applications from the ground up.
So we've sent the data off to the database.
It's on its way.
But do we just assume everything went smoothly?
Not quite. The code doesn't just fire off the query and hope for the best. It actually waits for confirmation that the data was inserted successfully.
Oh, so it's like a delivery confirmation.
Exactly.
How does it know?
Well, it checks the last row id attribute of the result object.
Last row ID.
Yeah, it basically contains the ID of the last row inserted into the database. If the insertion was successful, there will be a brand new ID.
Oh, I see.
Not just any random number either. This ID is auto-incremented by the database.
Okay.
It's unique for every single row. The code then checks if that ID is valid. Then if it is, boom, confirmation.
It's like getting a receipt with a unique transaction number.
I love it.
This whole process is pretty clever.
It really highlights the care you need when working with databases. It's not just checking data over a wall. We're building a clear communication channel and making sure every step is completed properly.
Right, it's a two-way street.
Exactly.
Okay, so the data's sent to the database. We've got confirmation it's arrived, safe and sound.
Data's happy.
But what about the tree view? We still need to update that, right?
Absolutely. Now that we know the database is up to date, it's time to reflect those changes in the tree view. The code uses the insert method of the tree view to add that new row representing the new data.
Great.
But there's a key detail here.
It's that.
Remember that unique ID we got from the database, the last row wid?
Yeah.
That ID becomes the first element in the tuple of values used to populate the new row in the tree view.
So the ID in the tree view matches the ID in the database.
Exactly. Perfectly synchronized.
That's so smart. Keeps everything consistent.
And it's details like this that make the difference between a functional app and a truly robust and reliable one.
This has been really insightful. I'm amazed by the level of thought and care that goes into something as seemingly simple as adding data to a database.
It's all about understanding those little nuances and potential pitfalls.
Sure.
The article does a great job of highlighting those considerations.
Before we move on, there's one thing I want to emphasize.
Okay.
This whole thing about using the auto-incremented ID from the database to update the tree view.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It's like giving the tree view and the database a shared language.
Absolutely.
This is going to be crucial when we get to deleting data in the next episode, right?
Absolutely.
That ID becomes our anchor point.
Right.
Make sure we're deleting the correct row from both the tree view and the database.
No room for errors there.
Okay, I think it's safe to say we've mastered the art of adding data securely and elegantly.
You got it.
I'm feeling pretty good about it.
You should. You've grasped the core concepts, the importance of security, data integrity.
I'm ready for the next challenge.
All right. So we've got that data safely in our database, but now we need to make sure the tree view updates to reflect those changes.
Right. The user needs to see what's happening, like when you add something to your online shopping cart.
Yes, and it appears right there.
Exactly.
The code uses the insert method of the tree view to make that new row for the data we added.
Okay, makes sense.
And that insert method, it's pretty flexible. Lets you choose things like the parent node, where the new row goes, and of course, the data itself.
I see in the code it adds the new row to the end.
Makes sense, it's the most recent entry.
Right, of course. But how does it know what goes in each column?
The data is given as a tuple, each element representing a specific column. ID, name, class, mark, and gender. That first element, though, that's the key. It's that last row we talked about.
The one from the database.
Yep, exactly. That makes sure the ID in the tree view perfectly matches the ID the database assigned.
Oh, that's important.
It's like making sure the address on a package matches the destination. You want to make sure things don't get lost.
Right. Big trouble if they don't match.
Exactly. And again, this is that attention to detail that makes a well-designed app really shine. We're not just randomly adding rows here. We're making sure every piece of information is in the right place and properly linked.
It's got to be precise.
Precisely. Now think about the doors this opens. We can build these interactive applications where users not only see the data, but they can change it, delete it.
Oh, wow, like a real-time inventory system.
Exactly. Update stock levels as they change.
Or a student database.
Teachers inputting grades right there.
So many possibilities.
The code does a few more things to tidy up and make things smooth for the user.
Like what?
Well, first, it tells the user the data's been added successfully.
Oh, right, like a confirmation.
Yep. It pops up a message box, shows that new ID. It's simple but effective.
Gives the user that reassurance.
And on top of that, it clears out those entry boxes after the data is added.
Oh, that's nice. A fresh start.
Exactly. No clutter, just a clean, intuitive interface. All those little things add up to a better user experience.
They really do.
So we've covered a lot.
Yeah, we have. A lot of ground.
Let's do a quick recap and make sure everyone's on the same page.
Good idea.
We started with making that secure connection between Tkinter and MySQL. That's where School Alchemy came in. And we emphasized how important it is to protect those database credentials. Then we dove into the add data function.
Right, that's where the validation happened.
Exactly. It handles user input gracefully, makes sure it's all good, and then inserts it securely into the database using those parameterized queries we talked about.
And don't forget about LastroWid.
Ah, yes, that clever little tool. We get that unique ID from the database, and it acts as our bridge between the database and the tree view. Perfect synchronization.
And then finally, we saw how the code updates the tree view with that new data, gives the user confirmation, and resets everything for the next input.
It's a beautiful flow.
It is. I never realized how much goes on behind the scenes for something that seems so simple.
It's a testament to how amazing software development is. All these little details working together.
The article we've been looking at really does a great job of breaking it all down.
It really highlights those core principles: security, data integrity, user experience.
I'm starting to feel like a Tkinter Treeview expert.
Uh-huh. You're well on your way.
We've gone from just displaying data to adding and deleting it all while keeping things secure and consistent. It's been a real journey.
It has. You've gained some really valuable skills here.
Okay, now I'm ready to tackle deleting data.
Ah, the next challenge.
Thank you to our expert for guiding us through this Tkinter Treeview and MySQL deep dive. Your insights have been awesome.
It was my pleasure. Always love to geek out about coding.
And to all of our amazing listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this adventure. We hope you've learned a ton and are feeling inspired to build your own incredible applications. Be sure to check out the links in the description for all the resources we talked about. And as always, happy coding.